Hi everyone, it's Fitz with the Power Talk following Wednesday's press conference with Joe Klanderman and some of his defensive coaches. Of course, we had Van Malone earlier, the cornerbacks coach, an associate head coach. So today we talked about the other position groups, but let's talk about what Joe Klanderman said. Defensive coordinator, coaches the safeties, and he seems to really like the depth of this defense. He mentioned that last year after the 7-1 start that it became very clear that they kind of ran out of gas. They were beaten up, they were injured, and they didn't have the depth at some spots they needed. So I asked him, do you feel like the added conditioning in the offseason maybe helped with those injury issues? And also, how's that depth? Is it better than last year? His answer was yes to both. I didn't expect him to say no, but I think the depth is what stands out the most. Look, injuries happen. It's the game of football. You're going to lose some dudes during the course of the season, and they're just going to have either contact injuries or just wear and tear injuries that will take them down or kind of reduce their effectiveness as defensive players. But he loves the depth. Now, one thing they haven't had this spring is depth at linebacker. And if you ever wonder why Kansas State doesn't have spring games anymore, and there's multiple reasons, but this is a big part. If you have one position group that's hit with injuries and rehabs, like linebacker has been for Kansas State, you don't have enough guys to play a spring game. You don't have enough for two teams. You might be able to scrimmage one-on-one with some young guys and what few guys you have left, but it's not going to be a great look at what you have as far as a complete defense. If you're that deep or shallow, I should say, on your depth chart, it's just going to be bad. 4 linebackers are rehabbing this spring, and most of the front line guys. But Ohio State transfer Gabe Powers has gotten a good look and been very impressive, according to Coach Klanderman. And so is Rex Van Wy, the JUCO transfer, who has now emerged as kind of a locker room leader, which is cool. As new guys, a new generation on the defensive side takes control now that players such as Austin Moore and Brendan Mott are gone. And speaking of defensive ends, Brendan Mott is the only one who doesn't return, and they've brought in some new dudes. I spoke briefly with defensive ends coach, Buddy Wyatt, and I tell you what, coach is fired up. He was fired up last year. And he says this group is potentially better, even without Brendan Mott, that the young guys just continue to progress. Now, I did a daily delivery on this not that long ago. You can go back and find that here on the YouTube channel. But they have extensive depth, at least 3 deep. Maybe they go 7 or 8 players deep at that defensive end spot, allowing them maybe in pass rush situations to go with 4 down in terms of defensive ends. But also, if injuries hit, they'll be fine. And if different teams come along doing different things, well, they'll probably play different types of players. It's given Coach Wyatt a lot of options at his defensive end spot, and it's kind of cool to see him so fired up over this group. And a reminder that a majority of the players at that spot are underclassmen. And I spoke to a coach also that emphasized that the best players on the defense and on the team are constantly getting calls with agents trying to tamper with them to bring them out of K-State because someone wants a defensive end. This is the ongoing problem that's got to stop. The ability to contact players that have signed by agents is sketchy at best because they are representing schools that aren't supposed to be contacting. If they're representing on your behalf, which means they contacted this player and then shopped the player to you, then I say you're in NCAA violations. The NCAA won't do anything. That's just how they roll. Let's get into more of the defense, though. Linebackers look good. They're seeing progress at nose tackle, including the frontline guys of Damian Ilalio and Big Old Uso, who is showing even more improvement here in his bonus season. The back end, they've got some young corners, but boy, they love them. Zayshawn Rich was special in the bowl game, and they probably expect him to start every snap. And as I've mentioned also on a daily delivery, the safety spot is my favorite position on this team because they not only have depth, they have really fun players. And one of the guys that I'm looking forward to seeing has sat out this spring in Gunnar Maldonado, the Arizona transfer, as he heals up. You see, that's what the spring really has become for Coach Chris Kleiman. they extended that window of strength and conditioning for the healthy guys to get bigger and faster, but unable to field full teams, full complements of players in practice and run the double reps, which means your ones are going against ones and twos against twos or whatever. You end up not having as much value out of the practices. So Joe Klanderman also credited Chris Kleiman for, kind of coming up with this. He feels like it will address the issues that they've had and might have again with players kind of running out of gas and getting injured. As I've said, this team looks bigger, and they're obviously faster from the times and speeds we've been given. We'll see how it all translates. But as spring football comes near to an end, I think next week is the last week, and I believe we have a Friday wrap-up press conference with Chris Kleiman. They've gotten through the spring itself pretty well. But the guys that were injured and left over from the season, well, they're still rehabbing. And that means they're planning to be ready to go when fall camp opens. We'll see. But spring ball is winding down. And man, I'm fired up for football after talking to coaches once again.